Breaking news in the SportsCenter, the 49ers wasting no time in their offseason, getting their superstar tight end on the books for the foreseeable future. San Francisco locking up six-time Pro Bowler George Kittle in a deal. It is a 4-year extension worth over $76 million, including $40 million of that guaranteed. Kittle has played his entire career in San Francisco after being drafted in the 5th round in 2017. As promised, Peter Schrager here to break all things down. We had a bunch of different questions scripted for you, and then we get the breaking news 10 minutes ago. That's show business, baby. So, Peter, what is your reaction to this extension?
Well, it keeps George Kittle as a 49er, as he should be. Back in 2020, 5 years ago, they had a long, arduous contract negotiation that ended up with having Kittle being the highest paid tight end in the league. That was in 2020. I remember it because I remember speaking with George the day after, and I said, how'd you celebrate? And he said, well, we had some Panda Express and wine in my apartment last night. I said, that's George Kittle for you. Yeah. 5 years later, this was going down that road again, where it was getting in the public a little bit that Kittle wasn't thrilled with his deal. It was up. Well, they take care of him. And now the question is, if you're keeping this thing going and the consistency, what do we do with Fred Warner? What do we do with Brock Purdy? The Niners, they're not saying their window is closed just yet. They're keeping it open, and it's a lot of the guys that were there for that whole run that took them to 2 Super Bowl appearances and all those NFC Championship games.
Because Debo is now in D.C., and you're looking at Kittle, 31 years old, still led the 49ers in receiving yards and touchdowns and catches. All right, let's run the 2-minute drill. Here we go. 128 days until opening night. Draft is over. Free agency, they're done barring any unexpected chaos. So what storylines, Schrags, should we be watching for right now?
All right, here are just 4 stories that I would keep an eye on over the next several months. First is Aaron Rodgers' watch, and I can call it Aaron Rodgers' watch 2025. We got that Jets logo there. He's currently on the market. Who wants him? Well, the Steelers seem to be the team, yet is he actually going to play? Because you saw him on McAfee. He said, I've got some personal things to deal with.
Yep.
I'll tell you this. He told the Giants and the Steelers straight up, I have no timetable. If you want to move on, you can move on. The Giants, they opted to pivot. They went with Russell Wilson and of course, Jameis Winston, and now a rookie. Steelers, Will Howard's the only new quarterback they added. He's a 6th-round pick. 2, we got the schedule release, May 14th. It's a couple Wednesdays from now. And I want to see who the Eagles open up with. This, to me, is an interesting one. The NFL usually will pit the teams that they think are going to be relevant at the end of the season. The Eagles schedule some of the teams that they could play at home. Well, the Rams, the Lions, the Bears, and how about the Raiders? Some interesting teams that they could possibly do. And, of course, the entire NFC East is a possibility. Who deserves that prime billing of that Thursday night game? My third one's an interesting one. James Cook. You're like, James Cook? Yeah, we know. Josh Allen's the MVP. A lot of running backs got paid this offseason, including Saquon getting a renegotiated deal that will make him the highest paid running back in the league. James Cook was unbelievable last year. He's entering the final year of his contract. His agent and him have publicly said they want more than $15 million. The Bills have scoffed at that number. James Cook is an amazing player. Awesome, and was huge in that AFC Championship game. They need him. Let's see what they can do. The last one is this. I go Shador, but it's really the Browns quarterback room. Like, I don't know if they can do Hard Knocks because of all the rules, but I would love to just have a camera on all of these names. Now, look, Deshaun Watson, he's going to be paid $46 million to not play. Must be nice. Then you got Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, who was drafted before Shador in the 3rd round, and then Shador Sanders. I'm curious, how does it work out in minicamp? How does it work out in training camp? And then when we get to week 1 with the Cleveland Browns, who is under center?
And that's your 2 minutes. Peter Schrager, a professional, breaking things down this morning on SportsCenter. Schrags, fantastic to see you, man. Thanks.
New England 4, Packers 5, with the Chargers as an honorable mention, which leads us right into which young QBs now have the most pressure on them based on the moves they made. So you think about the moves that now have been made. Caleb in year 2, well, I personally still think it's too early to have like Super Bowl expectations on a guy in year 2. I think there certainly can be playoff expectations.
There have to be playoff expectations, right? I mean, being able to take advantage of the rookie window when you have your quarterback at a controllable wage scale, especially at that position, knowing where the market is going to go this offseason, $60 million a year plus, you got to be able to capitalize on it. And you've got Caleb Williams under team control on that lower quarterback wage scale for the next 2 seasons. So what the Chicago Bears did this offseason makes a lot of sense. You can load up on talent on the offensive side of the ball. You can fortify this roster to make it an easy lift for Caleb Williams, or as easy as it possibly can be when it comes to trying to produce and put your team in position to qualify for the postseason.
A lot of pressure on Caleb Williams. He got everything he wanted. He got his head coach. He got a reworked offensive line. He got more weapons added to his side of the ball. We do expect more from him. But are we already putting too much expectation on this kid in year 2? And here's why I ask that. He does have a new regime coming in. He is going to have that calibration period. And I wonder about the division. You're talking about 3 other teams last year that were playoff teams and that had double-digit win seasons. And yes, what will the Lions look like now that Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson are gone? Will there be any sort of regression when you lost 2 coordinators that were so influential in your success? What will Minnesota look like without Sam Darnold? What is J.J. McCarthy going to be? There could be some regression there. With the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love was inconsistent last year. What if that persists this year? I sure hope not, but what if it does? That could maybe allow the Bears to take a step forward, but if those 3 teams stay as good as they were this past season, if not better, do we really expect the Bears to take that big of a leap?
Well, they have to, Smalls, for exactly the reason that you just pointed out. Them teams ain't going nowhere. So right now, you're the one that has the competitive advantage, well, at least against Detroit and Green Bay, because those quarterbacks are making market-level money. Mm-hmm. So if you're the Chicago Bears, take advantage of what your advantage is, which is Caleb Williams being on the cheap, relatively speaking. Look, your guy was the number 1 pick in the draft for a reason. He is uber talented. People said if he developed properly, he could be the best quarterback in that division. And that should be the expectation because he is the number 1 pick. Anytime you invest the number 1 pick at a quarterback spot, you are expecting that guy to be top 5 at the position at some point throughout his career. With what they've put around Caleb Williams right now, from the coaching staff, from the talent standpoint, he's got to produce. And yeah, I know there's a learning curve that's associated with winning. I know they were 5-12 last year and in the cellar of the division. But you got to turn that around at some point. And it feels like all the pieces are in place to do so in 2025.
You bring up an interesting way of looking at it, right, in terms of the rookie contracts. Because if I look at that division without money, I would sit there and say that the quarterback that has the most pressure on them to be great, and you have them on the list here, is Jordan Love. Mm-hmm. I think he has to be great.
More than Trevor Lawrence?
They're not. No, I'm saying in
NFC
NFC
North. Oh, in the NFC North.
Not,
okay, got
not
it.
the list.
I thought you meant in the list in general.
No.
Sorry.
I'm saying the Packers are on the list, and I would also say that he has more pressure on him than any quarterback in that division to be great. That said, go back to the quarterback rules as featured on ESPN.com twice. No big deal. Who has the best chance of high-level success outperforming their contract? It's Caleb. Because I don't want to jump to a conclusion. I don't know what J.J. McCarthy is going to be. Can he outperform his contract? Yes, obviously, because his contract is so low, relative, as you said, relatively speaking. But this was the number 1 pick in the draft who's going to make $8.9 million this year, whose team, I don't want to say is loaded around him, but loaded up around him every which way on the offensive side of the ball. And I will continue to go back to something that John Yurkovich said, former NFL player, defensive lineman. We were on Carmen and Yurko on ESPN 1000 last week. He continuously said, and I agree with him, Bears fans cannot complain. You begged and screamed. You wanted Ben Johnson. He was the savior for all of it, that it's no longer just on Caleb. He's the guy to fix everything. So Caleb has to be great for the team to be great because his contract is so low.
Well, not just Bears fans. This is the head coach that Caleb Williams wanted
Good point, too, when he went on the podcast.
He verbalized that. He communicated. He wanted Ben Johnson to be his head coach. Well, you got him. Somebody that's innovative, somebody that finds a way to be creative when it comes to the X's and O's. It won't be boring when it comes to a Ben Johnson offense, especially if the offensive line is not an impediment to what he wants to draw up from an X's and O's standpoint. And based on what the Chicago Bears have done this offseason, it won't be. That offensive line is fortified. Think about it. They added 3 veterans for the interior of that offensive line, 2 trades and a free agent signing. They got Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright, bookend tackles. They added another tackle in the second round of this year's draft, one of 3 second-round picks that they've had. So they have everything that you need from an offensive line standpoint by virtue of talent, by virtue of depth, to be able to get it done. They got the skill position players to throw the football to. I'll have to take a wait-and-see approach when it comes to the running backs, but DeAndre Swift has been a 1,000-yard back in this league, and Roschon Johnson, your number 2, had 6 rushing touchdowns last year. So you've got enough of a running game. This is on you to make it work. In the NFL, nothing is going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. This is as ideal as you could ask for when it comes to a quarterback and the players around him on the offensive side of the ball.
Do you think it works against him, too, that Jayden Daniels had so much success last year,
Yes.
and C.J. Stroud had so much success the year prior and again last year, taking his team to the playoffs?
Yes.
I just wonder, without those two having the seasons that they've had right out of the gate, if we would have so much pressure on Caleb Williams in year 2.
I'm glad you brought up Jayden Daniels. The team around